Hey everybody, welcome to the GameSpace Game Show, episode 20. It is an all about Pantheon show. Woo! Woo! And my co-host for tonight is David, the Branded Wolf. David, how you doing?
What's up, Dick?
That's all I get? Just a what's up?
That's all you get. I'm half asleep again. Sorry. I got my coffee, though.
You know what? We don't even really care about you because we have two developers with us from Visionary Realms, and they are amazing developers. We have Brad McQuaid. Brad, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. And with him is Chris Perkins. Chris, how are you?
Hey, everybody. Doing great. Yeah. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're actually extremely excited to have you guys because you know, on MMO, Pantheon is like the most clamored for game. And I know I've been waiting for it. And I know that Brandon's been waiting for it too, because whenever we talked about doing the show, he was just freaking out that you guys would even be on it. So there are a bunch of questions that we have, and we have a very full chat channel right now with a lot of people asking a lot of questions, but let's kind of get into some of the basics about Pantheon and maybe start a little bit on why you guys decided to make Pantheon, why you decided to do it now of all times.
Well, that's a great question. It's really, if you look back at the history of MMOs, you know, over the last, I spent 20 plus years, more recently, a lot of MMOs have become more casual, more do your own thing. No team, you know, not as much teamwork, not a lot of social interaction, and it just became really clear to us through people reaching out to us, to ourselves playing these games, that bringing back an MMO that focuses on that community, those shared experiences, retention, really creating a home, a game that's meant to be played for months, if not years. There really wasn't anything out there like that. So it's like, wow, there's a great space for us to get into, make a game that we want to play, and make a game that a lot of other people have been waiting for quite some time to play.
Yeah, that's very true, actually. And one thing that is interesting about this game that I've kind of heard a little bit about is that it's primarily a PvE game, more so. Like, you guys are going to have PvP, right? But you're really looking at like the challenging PvE content. Is that correct?
Definitely.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, that's an easy answer. Yeah, challenging PvE content, but also we'll have PvP servers and other special rule servers as well.
Awesome. So whenever we get into like challenging PvE content, like what kind of stuff do you have any plans for how you're going to make it challenging? I mean, a lot of times, you know, challenging in a lot of senses to a lot of games is just kind of having, you know, those big damage sponge enemies. Do you guys have any plans on how you might change that a little bit to make things more challenging?
You're right. A lot of people just add more hit points, add more armor class, and say, there you go. But Chris, why don't you tell them?
That's what we're doing, right?
No. No, we
bump up the ACHP and call it a day.
That's right. No, we're suckers for punishment, and we always choose kind of the path that we think is the best, even if that path requires more work. So, yeah, Chris, tell them about the AI and everything else.
Just lump it all in there, AI and everything else.
Everything else, yeah.
Everything else.
Go ahead and run with that, Chris.
In fact, if you could just read the code.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, well, that's a great question. I mean, going back to what you asked before, like why Pantheon, why now? The challenge is definitely a big piece of that for us. And it's not to say there's not other challenging games out there. We would be remiss to say that, you know, there's not. But I think what we're aiming to capture is challenge in the context of a deeply social, deeply community-driven context. Yeah. And that's one of the key differentiators of our game. And there's many ways that we're hoping to go about achieving that. Brad alluded to, one of our systems, the disposition system, where players are very used to at this stage in the genre. They're used to enemies that have, varying stats, AC, HP, attributes, resistances, things like that. But what we were wanting to capture in the disposition system is, yes, a more of an organic, surprising variety of stat variation among NPCs, but also behavioral. That's really the key. So when you come across an NPC with a specific disposition, you may not know what it is, but by observing how they act, how they respond to what you're doing, how they act within the environment itself, they're going to possess kind of this new layer, if you will, where you can't quite predict how they're going to behave, which is one of the ways we're trying to kind of layer in some of that challenge. The other is through, we talk a lot about strategic and tactical combat, and that's absolutely the case. And you can, I guess, probably, I want to recognize the fact that there's a lot of things that we don't want to tout things as novel about our game that other games do as well. We want to be cognizant of that. But again, within that open world, community-based gameplay, having boss fights and mini boss fights and just NPC encounters in general that incorporate the environment itself as an obstacle and as something to be reckoned with in the midst of combat, and then also NPC behaviors and NPC encounters that are designed to really test your mettle as a group in a shared environment. I think that's kind of this simplest way I could maybe start chipping away at that answer.
Yeah.
I would just add that, and we haven't gone into a lot of detail yet, but the encounter system is something really important to us. Just really quick, boss mobs might not always be in the same location. If you zerg a mob with too many players, the mob might call in reinforcements or teleport somewhere else. So it's not just Groundhog Day. I think that's what we're trying to avoid. Just this we're in this dungeon. We know where everything is. We're doing the same thing over and over again. No, but we might slip something in there that so hopefully surprises you and like Chris says, challenges you.
Yeah, you know what else is kind of interesting whenever you guys were kind of talking about like the disposition system and things like that. One of the things I noticed not too long ago, you guys had the Hive leader heal you guys in the game. And one of the things I noticed that whenever you were playing the game, it wasn't just the sense that, the immersion of the game itself, but also I noticed that like whenever you were fighting or whenever something happened, like in the chat box, it gave very detailed descriptions about like what was going on. Like whenever they died, it kind of gave you like a little feeling about like how they did it. It kind of gave me like a sense of like a multi-user dungeon, like the old school kind of text-based kind of stuff. Is that something that you guys are actively working on to kind of give like more of a story behind each encounter, or is it just kind of like, is that going to change like throughout the game as you progress?
We want to show some of that information. We're showing a lot of information now because obviously we're in pre-alpha and we need that data. We don't want to show so much information that people can chart things out and make the game more predictable. But we do like giving players information to help them learn an area. So, yes, information. How much? We're still going to dial that in between now and release.
Okay.
And some of what you guys are talking about too, if I'm correct, is more of just that immersion, that flavor text, that as your casting abilities and NPCs are responding or dying or whatever, you're seeing these little blurbs. And I mean, just simply, I just think it's a nice touch. It's a layer of polish and a layer of attention to detail that it's beyond that in our game, and that gets into the perception system a little bit and our consideration mechanic, actually considering an NPC and some of the messages you'll get back, or maybe you'll get a different death rattle which if you're not familiar with that term, it's just what an NPC might say as they die. If your perception's high enough, you might see a different death rattle. You might see more into a death rattle where a clue is given or something. So we do have plans for expanding that and deepening that, but at its basic level, it's an attention to detail that I think is a really nice touch and adds a lot to the immersion.
And it's also interesting you brought up text mods, because that's our heritage. We go back to the early '90s playing those games, and you will see in the text, some of the text, an homage to the MUDs of old. So most players won't even notice it, won't even think about it. But some of the old school guys will be like, "Hey."
That was for you, David. You're the old school guys.
Oh yeah. Thanks, I'm the old guy. I appreciate it. I love you, Dex. It's all good. But I play my share of MUDs too, so yeah, it's appreciated.
We do have a question in chat. The environment resistances system is interesting to me. How will anaerobic and frigid and wind shear look, for example? Can you talk on this some more?
Man, tell you what. So I'm so excited about this system. I just, yeah, I mean, and it's also one of those questions where, yes, I could talk about it a lot more. I don't know where to even start or how long to go. Right? Yeah. But, the seed of this began very much with kind of just that very basic sense of the environment needs to matter. When you're, it's one thing to have weather and to have, different climates visually represented in different areas, but man, to really have that mean something and have an effect on your player, on your character, and then be able to engage it through a system of acclimation and exposure control, and just there's so much potential here. Whether it be large scale, where you've got just a frigid tundra zone, where the entire zone is a frigid climate in itself, or you've got, like we've showed in Amber Fate, one of our raid zones, where you actually see little pockets of these kind of climates, where there's an anvil-shaped rock in Amber Fate where this dwarven master smith resides with his anvil, and it's called the anvil, and it sits in itself. It sits in a scorching environment within this frigid, frozen cave, and so we there's just so much potential in building these little pockets of content where the environment, the climate, our atmosphere system, which is pretty similar to climates, except it covers non-natural phenomenon, and has a different mitigation mechanic. It doesn't use acclimation, uses finding artifacts in the world that actually mitigate those effects. But really leveraging both those together, and then we have such a cool spread of stuff too. We've shown frigid and Amber Fate, where you're crossing the bridge, for example, and you see like the frost, the fingers, tendrils of frost forming around the outside of your screen, and you're getting buffeted by wind, and you're hearing all the stuff. I mean, it's so cool.
Super immersive,
but
right?
It is, man. I'm speaking as, yeah. I mean, even to me, I love that spot, and that's just one. We've got scorching, we've got toxic, we've got anaerobic, we've got pressure and wind shear. Those are the 6 that we're launching with, and there'll be combinations too. You can imagine being deep underwater, and you're in an anaerobic and a pressure climate down there, where you're getting kind of hit by both of these things, and you have to be acclimated appropriately to be able to get down there. And certain races will have a leg up, on some of that. The Dark Mer, for example, might naturally be more resilient to pressure climates, because they're in underwater, have affinity with underwater being what they are, whereas the Cold Dark Dwarves may have a natural frigid, and that goes beyond just typical resistances, right? This isn't just cold resist. This race starts with higher cold resist, but it's actually getting into that acclimation layer, getting into that climate layer, where dwarves, yes, may have a higher base cold resist, but then they also might have a little bit of a leg up when it comes to acclimating to frigid environments specifically. So much cool stuff to talk about. And can
the ogre swim at all, Chris, or does he just sink?
It depends on the ogre, really. It depends on the ogre.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It depends on, if whatever they're chasing is swimming away or at the bottom.
So I mean, there's been a ton of questions just flying out there. One of them was kind of caught my eye. They're asking how you guys plan on tackling the data miners that they've seen in other MMOs, and if you fear it could harm the mystery of the game if they start getting some more information on it. So do you guys have any?
We definitely have plans. We're definitely cognizant of that. We have a great tech department, great programming department. Can't go into details other than just to say the general answer is you basically keep the client as dumb as possible and only send the client the data that it absolutely needs. And that's pretty much where I gotta leave it at this point.
That sounds good, honestly. I'm not gonna lie, man. I've gotten a little tired of the data mining over the years, and it's gotten pretty bad. And it's like, okay, it's great to know this stuff, but then it's like, well, what am I discovering? Because it's already known.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that another thing too. I think philosophically is some people, like let's even just say mapping or something. Some people, we don't have an in-game map. We don't have like a little radar or anything like that. It's more sandbox, adventure, explore. Stick with your group, learn the area. But that's not. We know some players they're gonna map every little inch out, and they're gonna put up a website, and it's really up to the player if they want to go to that other website. We're not going to have an official one, no official spoilers, but it's really up to the player. If you want to play and just you and your buddies figure this stuff out yourself, go for it. If you want to go to one of these websites, go for it. Play however you want to do it. But we're going to our general philosophy is to provide the minimal information or data like that.
That said, I think one key thing to add to that would be there is a way to design, to an extent, you can't totally keep this from happening, certainly, but you can design meaningful variation to the point where it's harder to predict things going exactly like it did for this other person. So there can be spoiler sites, there can be data mining that goes on, and obviously we're cognizant of that and expect that, but I think we're doing a good job, and we're being mindful all along the way to build in as much meaningful variation to our systems, be it perception and the storylines, be it NPC spawn locations, their routines, the dispositions they spawn with, which could cause them to behave again in unpredictable ways, even not just in how they engage in combat, but how they move around unengaged, how they just exist in the environment. So there's hopefully going to be enough meaningful variation to at least make it more of a varied personal experience from player to player.
I think we can do it. I think it's about striking a balance where on one extreme you have everything's static, everything's predictable, you can map everything out. On the other extreme is almost procedurally generated content, just randomness. And I don't think people want either. I think people want something in the middle there. They want to be able to learn an area, feel good about being familiar with a dangerous area and be able to lead other people into it, for example. So they want to be able to learn it, but then they don't want it to be Groundhog Day. Boy, this dungeon's exactly. I was here last night, and it was we had the exact same plan, the exact same group makeup. We fought the same mobs. They did the same thing. We want to get away from that to a reasonable degree.
Yeah, and I love hearing that, because that happens a lot where if it's the same encounters over and over again, I mean, it also turns into a situation where, especially if the rewards are good enough, then people just kind of, just try and chain it just over and over and over again, and just keep replaying the same stuff. And in terms of gameplay, I mean, I like a little variety, but that's me. So
that'll be there too. I mean, there will. We don't want to come across as saying there won't be some traditional camps and things like that.
Right.
It's just what we want is a variety, and what we're trying to do is appeal to a broad audience, whether they're campers or crawlers or whatever terminology you want to use.
So we've got a few things to show here on the screen, but before we hit that, we have another question in our YouTube. They said, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit before the show, about how you guys were using Unity, and the question is why go with the Unity engine?
Want to talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, I won't say too much.
You're in
here.
there all the time.
Yeah. I guess the simple touch points would be, number one, Unity is extremely accessible when it comes to starting a project. Unity was a choice that was made before I was on the team, and I've been on the team nearly 4 years now. So wasn't there when the decision was made, but I know from talking with like Daniel Kren, our CTO, he has said before that he would go with Unity again if he was to make the decision again, because it's very accessible. It's very easy to get the visual things in place. A lot of the scripting and just the general tools that come built in to Unity, or the accessibility of doing certain things in Unity out of the box is really nice. But Unity also out of the box was not enough. And I think that's another key point. And that's where I would point to some of the key people that have come on the team that have been able to kind of open up the bottlenecks for us. I read a lot online of different communities and stuff, questioning Unity's ability to handle a game of this scale. And I think that's warranted in when you're considering Unity's capability just out of the box on its own. But we've got some really, really talented people that have been able to open up some of those key bottlenecks, and not just in the visual department, but in the networking department and several different areas of Unity that have made it very, very workable for us. So, and really exceeded our expectations, honestly, in certain ways as far as what it could do. So I think we're going to end up with a very beautiful game that also is that runs really well and handles just about anything we could try to throw at it.
I mean, we just showed some images of the scenery too, and I gotta say, I'm extremely impressed with how good it looks.
Yeah, for something that's in alpha, it looks gorgeous than some of the other games that are currently in actual release.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, it really does look great. So one of the biggest things that we've been getting asked about are classes. A lot of people are asking about a lot of the different classes, and
nobody wants to know about classes.
Yeah, no, Paladin. That's it. No.
So there's one word that keeps coming up, and it's summoner. I've been seeing a lot of that out there.
Yeah.
But before we get into that a little bit, I want to talk about these new classes that you guys kind of revealed. So you guys did a reveal. When was it? Was it yesterday? Maybe yesterday, the day before, of the three classes: the monk, the ranger, and the rogue.
Yep.
And we've got some of the art that you guys put out, and I mean the art looks amazing. But what can you tell us about these classes? Are they? I guess they're all melee, but of course the ranger might have options of doing both.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. We're taking a 4 months to basically do a 3 reveals based on a certain archetype per month. So this month we started with the melee DPS, or the melee DPS archetype. Mm-hmm. We'll have a caster archetype month. We'll have a tank archetype month, and then we'll have probably a healer, and then slash CC. If we end up putting the bard out for these reveals. So yeah, it was. It's really exciting, man. People have waited a long time. These class reveals, class design in general, is kind of my department, and it's something that I take very seriously. And I won't take too long to say this, but Yeah, I mean, I would consider myself to be a pretty jaded MMO gamer. And around 2013 or so, I had pretty much all but stopped playing MMOs. This was before I came on Visionary Realms, but just nothing interested me. And there's this kind of drive, if you will, the fire in my belly is I want to make a game. I want to work on a game. I want to share this process with Brad and the others on the team working on making Pantheon in a way that it is genuinely a game that cures my jadedness. And when it comes to class design, man, how many rogues have we seen? How many rangers have we seen? How many monks have we seen? And that's not to say that these class reveals are, these revolutionary golden, things. But what I really tried to capture with these is, again, going back to that framework of open world, community-based gameplay. How do we capture the heart and the spirit of these classes in the way that they do what they do as an archetype, in this case, dealing damage, but in a way that has that horizontal flavor and that sense of really belonging to a world. That gives them real identity and makes them actually really exciting to think about playing. All the different things that you can do with this toolkit. And this isn't even as a core class. Yes, this is a complete reveal. I think, I don't know where I said it recently, but this does not account for everything that these classes can do. We talk about, having to go out in the world and find masters of your class to learn specific things from, and we mean that when we say that. So you should expect that when we put out a class reveal like this, yes, it's a complete core picture of that class, but it doesn't cover everything. There are even more. There's even more that these classes can uncover, and it also goes beyond that to say we haven't talked about this system yet, but it's been in the works for a while internally. But a method of actually evolving some of your class abilities to greater points of power or potency. And
Cool.
I did sneak one example of that in the Rogue reveal with Shadow Walk and Shadow Dwell. So you should be asking when you read that, okay, how does that work? How do you go from having Shadow Walk to Shadow Dwell? And the answer is not, oh, well, you just reach a certain level and train it. There's a way to actually evolve that ability to grow in your ability as a rogue, to where that ability transforms and becomes more potent. And it's things like that get me really excited. So these class reveals are meant to whet the appetite. They're meant to give people something their hearts and minds can start to wrap around as they think about what they want to play and the kind of identity they want to have in the world. But it's also,
we're not going to.
There's also more.
The beans. We're not going to. We're not that kind of team.
Yeah.
That's
Gotta be some mystery.
Yeah. And that's the best thing is, a lot of people. Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword because, we all want more information about certain things like classes, and we want to know all the little details about how things are going to work and everything. But having a little mystery, there's nothing wrong with that. I like being surprised about certain things, right?
Amen.
So, a lot of people are talking about the Ranger reveal, and they're saying, so how's the Ranger going to work? Is it really going to work as a pet class? Is it just, it's going to be kind of a pet class? Like, what exactly can they expect from the Ranger?
Ranger is not a pet class. Those, that Beckon line of abilities, Beckon Pantheress, Beckon Thunderpaw, those are meant to be flavorful versions of melee abilities. So, you're not controlling these animals. You're beckoning them in. They will come in with a specific purpose and a specific behavior. They will do that, and then they will leave. So I don't. Yeah, I want to make sure that confusion or any confusion there is cleared. It's not. Rangers are not a pet class. But they have this affinity with animals where they are able to beckon and call on them, either to assist in combat or to, the examples given with the Veil Striders, where you get this short-term speed boost, or the Veil Hawks, one of the ones I'm most excited about, because not only just the coolness of being able to traverse certain areas and moments with them, but just the way that it can flow and combo into different ranger abilities at range, especially. It's going to be really cool to see that. But no, they are not a pet class. They have affinity with animals.
It's more like an anima or animus kind of thing, right? Where it takes over you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
So like, as you mentioned, like you would possibly like call in an animal, or is it like you're taking on the abilities of an animal?
This is actually calling in an animal. So
okay.
you would see. So for Thunderpaw, for example, you would see a Thunderpaw bear, which is a kind of bear in our game that you'll actually see what they look like at some point. But it will kind of storm in, do its roar, knock your enemy down, and then will kind of leave. Kind of run out.
They don't stick around. They're not static. They're not.
Right.
They're not static. No, they're not.
Okay, cool.
But this is not taking on aspects of animals. This is literal animals that exist in the wilds of Terminus. You're beckoning them in because of your communion with them, your affinity with them, and they are aiding you in certain ways.
That's really cool. It's like you phone a friend and then they just come in and.
That's right.
That's right.
I love that. So one thing that's also pretty interesting about your game, and we've seen this in some other games, such as Vanguard. There are a lot of races and a lot of classes. So in that regard, are you guys doing some sort of specific racial abilities? Are there going to be some classes that excel more at certain... or some races that excel at classes better than others, or how is that working?
Yeah, we're not afraid of that. That it can feel it as a developer sometimes. There's this constant tension of not wanting to walk away from some of the standards that have been put in place. Where everyone's equally good at everything, and so. Yes, I love the idea, and I think as a team we love the idea of the races having not just uniqueness, not just identity, but actually a unique identity that works its way out into the play experience in the form, of racial passives and class passives. Again, just kind of snuck that in there with the Ranger, the Veil Striders. Man, I can't even remember what I called that. There's so many things in my head right now. The passive that increases their run speed while they're outside. I even had them up so I could reference them when I needed to. It's going to bother me if I don't say it. The Veil Striders, or the Veilguard Stride. There we go. Veil Striders are the wolves. Sorry.
Okay.
The Veilguard Stride. That passive. There's going to be class passives as well. Some of them will have like a lower floor, like the Rangers, where that's something that they just get. Other class passives are things that you will actually earn or find that will become part of your passive expression. But then the races, absolutely. One of the ones that comes to mind is one I mentioned earlier with the Cold Arc Dwarves. Their natural hardiness they're made out of this mystical union of the ice of Ryfel, which is one of the Dwarven celestials, and stone, the very stone from the Cold Arc Mountain, which is at the heart of Old Asa, where the dwarves hail from originally. Causus took those two things, pressed them together in this perfect, celestial-like way to create this living thing called the Cold Arc Dwarf, and so they have in their very being this fusion that makes them very, very resilient to the cold and gives them some of that climate-based leg up as well with the frigid climate. So, but it won't just be passive things like that either. There will be some combination of passive and active racial and class-based abilities.
That's pretty cool.
Obviously, class-based abilities, what class-based passives and racial passives and passive and active abilities. Yeah.
That sounds pretty good, honestly.
Yeah, I love stuff like that because sometimes it kind of might push some people to want to play something that has an affinity to a certain class, but it's also really cool to see something that you might not consider to kind of switch it up a little bit and play something that might not have an affinity or something like that, and you're just, you know, maybe like the most badass gnome or something like that you know, like that's a dire lord, or, you know, whatever.
Well, that's a really good point. That's a really important point, and I think that's something to say too. Is, you know, it's it could be that you're going to find ogres have kind of that classic, you know, frontal stun immunity, let's say, maybe. But that doesn't mean, or I guess maybe another way to say it would be, one of the really fun challenges is finding a way to, like you said, if it's a gnome warrior or a halfling warrior, let's say, like what kind of unique passives could they have which would give them an equal but different advantage?
Yeah.
And not necessarily, maybe not the same extent of an advantage, but one that when you think of the kind of the lay of the game and the design tapestry from start to finish, that really is very meaningful and something that someone could really choose to say, you know what, frontal stun immunity is awesome, but man, that halfling passive is just so good in so many different situations. I'm going halfling. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I mean that's I mentioned when in the agenda that I love gnomes, so I mean I'm probably going to be playing several different types of yeah. Thank you, David.
Well, gnomes can't be warriors, by the way, which is why I moved away from them. So at least currently that's not in the cards. And
so like a half, like a halfling,
a half gnome,
a half gnome. So another question that was asked, and it kind of works in regards to, I guess, you know, not so much abilities, but like gear that you can equip and things like that. So how far can you really push them? Like, are certain classes only going to be locked down to like certain types of gear, or is it going to be a thing where you might have a warrior but you want him to use light armor or something like that? Is that going to be possible, or is that kind of like frowned upon?
Possible, yeah.
But you wouldn't.
I would say. Well, yeah. I mean, I would say at this point, we're keeping that intact, that sense of progression through the armor types. So yeah, as a warrior, you would want to be, you know, reaching for that leather when you're in cloth, and the mail when you're in leather, and the plate when you're in mail. You want to move down that line. Whether there will be exceptions to that, I love exceptions to norms. I love those edge cases. So expect there to be things like that. Whether it's through you know, an unexpected attribute priority, where you would think as a warrior, it's just strength, stamina all the way. Just you've got obviously agility and dexterity, which kind of live in this secondarily preferable world, but then you would never think of, you know, intelligence or wisdom or something like that as playing a role. But I love
charisma matter again.
Or charisma. There you go. Yeah. Your taunt effectiveness is
oh good lord,
the less charisma you have, the less potent your taunt will be.
Wow.
But I mean, and I'm not. That's not. Don't walk away thinking that's going to be the case. That's just a thought off the top of my head. But I mean, yeah, it's those edge cases are really cool. I think they breathe a lot of life into these games because they break norms, and you got to keep an eye on that. And it can't be just this cacophony of just ridiculousness everywhere. But I think when you establish a really good set of norms and standards to build the skeleton and the framework of your game, then you can break those rules in really effective ways, really interesting ways. So,
and something else that's kind of that we've seen a lot of as MMOs have progressed through the decades, and it's crazy that I'm saying decades because you know, when you're there when they start, it's just kind of like, where has the time gone? But as we've kind of progressed through the decades, a lot of MMOs have put emphasis on story and how, you know, you're the one and all this kind of stuff, and a lot of people have kind of had mixed feelings about that. But is there a kind of story happening in Pantheon? And if so, I mean, is everyone going to have their own personal story? Is it going to be anything like that, or how exactly does story play in Pantheon?
Man, what a can to open.
Yeah, you got a couple hours.
I think what Dex means, like the simplest thing, people are only like, are we like the chosen heroes, or can we just be normal, common?
You're not chosen heroes. No, you're not.
Okay.
You're not chosen ones. You're not glowing from birth. You are just you are a displaced citizen of your race on a melting pot in the middle of the frail age where you mean next to nothing, and you have to carve out your place. You got to earn it. That's right. And so yeah, that is a good thing to clear up if there's still any question about that. And I don't. I'm happy to talk more about classes. We can get into some of the stuff with like the perception system and storylines and how that will play into players are not going to have their own like personal storylines in the sense of something like you would thinking like Guild Wars 2, where you're developing this identity through cutscenes, and this is about kind of that open world, non-linear, non-hand-holded way of really finding your own place and existence within this world, which is much bigger than you.
It's really with the players, right, Chris? I mean, you're creating your own persona that fits into the actual gaming community of other real players. And so who you become, what your reputation is, what you're known for is part of it's not part of some set story that's applied to everybody. It's really individual because it's who you are and how you interact with the other players.
Yeah, absolutely. There's kind of two pillars. There's the community side, where, to go back to that tenet from the beginning, this is a open world, community based game, so your reputation as a player is huge, and not just as a player but guilds as well, the guilds that form and make names for themselves doing certain things, and that can be really positive, lots of glory there, or it can be really negative, and and that's part of a living, breathing world that we're really excited about seeing again. But then there's the other pillar, which is the way you engage with the game world, and that's one that we've taken a lot of care to make meaningful. Story, context, it's easy to take for granted, and I get it. We get it that there's a lot of people that just genuinely don't care very much for that side of things, and we want to have a very coherent game that scratches all the right itches and satisfies all those places for those people. But for the people that do, man, there is a lot to discover, and the richness that will bring to your play experience is it's going to be really awesome.
I mean, I love hearing that. So let's go back a little bit to some of the classes, because we didn't get to touch on Summoner, which a lot of people have been asking about. So is there anything that you can tell them about the Summoner? Anything special? They really want to know about the pets that you can summon. Is there anything that you can say about those?
I will. I want to play nice with our with Ben Dean. He's awesome.
Chris, give him a cheese.
Man, it's tough. I would love to say so much more, and I'm really excited for these class reveals. But I did the interview at PAX with Basgrim, which shout out to him for putting that together, and would encourage anyone who's interested in Pantheon and the classes to go and find that on YouTube. It's a good, I think, again, it's light on information, I know, but it's at least a good kind of primer to get your head initially around where the classes are going for the most part. But what I said then, and what I'll repeat quickly now, is that the Summoner needs to feel like a summoner. there's the pet aspect of it, which is key. The pets, what I really want to do with them is the summoner is going to do less actual fighting through spells, like offensive spells. They're going to be relying more on their pets, which should give you a sense of how powerful these pets will become. Mm-hmm. But I also really want to make sure that the different pets, the different types of pets or classifications of pets really feel different in the same kind of way, the same kind of feeling you got with these most recent class reveals, where the sense was like, oh man, this really is, they're going to have some pretty unique identifiable utility here. I kind of feel a burden to do that same thing with the pets, because they are what makes the summoner to such a great degree. The summoner's identity comes from how identifiable and how meaningful these pets are in their activity and their combat and the way they do what they do.
I think this is a good opportunity too to make an important point. When we're more vague about things, it's not that we like teasing people. It's not that we haven't figured this stuff out.
I like teasing people.
Well, Chris likes to tease, yeah. But really, for us, the testing phases are extremely important. We're in the middle, almost the middle pre-alpha. We've got alpha, we've got beta. There are a lot of ideas that we think are great. They look great on paper. They're being implemented. They're coming together. But until the players really have a chance to interact with these things, whether they're abilities, skills, items, whatever it is, areas, regions. We don't like to set anything in stone until we have that kind of community and tester feedback. Mm-hmm. That's how important our testing community is to us, and how we need to absolutely, with an MMO, listen to them to get it right. And so I just wanted to get that out there. A huge shout out to everyone who's helping us test, who's pledged. And then people who are coming in later phases, thank you. We look forward to seeing you in the game. But it's not early access on Steam, getting a sneak peek of the game. Mm-hmm. You're really helping us tune and give feedback and realize, oh yeah, that was a great idea, or wasn't quite that great of an idea. Let's change it or tweak it.
Mm-hmm. We've actually had a few questions about that. People are wondering how they could help you, and I think you did release some of that information around PAX, didn't you? About how, like, the different levels that they could potentially join in at, like the alpha or pre-alpha.
Yeah, levels. We made some adjustments. If you go to our website, pantheonmmo.com, and you click on the pledge button, you'll see all the different options there. And we updated those fairly recently. We did have a PAX special where it turned out we needed some more people in pre-alpha. We were able to open that up again. Okay. It's closed now, but there's still alpha and beta coming up. And we are a largely crowd-funded game. And everyone who's pledged and supported us, huge thank you. It's what keeps us going in just about every way, so we appreciate it. That could happen. Who knows what might happen again as we need people, as the game grows, as we have more content, more features, more mechanics to test. We'll definitely be bringing in more and more people to help us get that absolutely essential feedback.
Excellent. Yep. So we're getting pretty close to the end of the show here. We've got enough time for about one question, and then our next segment, which we kind of go into plugs and what we're playing. But my last question is going to be about these classes, because I did have another question about them. And we kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of the ranger and the ranger skills and things like that. But for classes such as like the rogue, like the traditional rogue, you kind of play as maybe kind of like a trickster. You kind of play as a backstab stealth type of character a little bit. Are there going to be options to kind of diversify certain classes? Like maybe you want to play a rogue that kind of has that ability, but maybe they want to switch it up a little bit Like, how different can you kind of go outside, I guess, the boundaries of traditional class norms? Is that going to be possible at all?
Great question. If you followed our development, you'll know that a few years ago, I guess it's been, there was the direction at that point was towards things like class specializations, where a cleric, for example, could be the healer that you would typically think of, or they could move more into like an off-tank kind of melee-ish type role. And I love class specialization, like I think most people do, to some degree. Like there's always that kind of romantic sense of really being able to carve your own path and have options available. But as we got further along, and as I tried to really bear down on this class design stuff, it really became clear that what was going to be best for the game, and what was going to be best for our class expression with the timeline that we have, was going to be to take a lot of that creative work in specializations and find ways to collapse that in onto the main parent, where now the cleric is the cleric and the rogue is the rogue. So that being said, my answer would be yes, to a degree, in that, and there's a few ingredients. The first ingredient is the importance of ability choice, preemptive ability choice, because your ability slots are limited by design, so that when you are in combat, you are not able to change those out. And so you have to be part of that strategic piece. And this isn't just like, okay, at the beginning of my 2 or 3 hour gameplay session, I load up my abilities because I'm going to be in this area and don't even think about it again. This will be something that you are paying attention to as you move through the encounter. And so that ingredient in place means that you need an ability arsenal wide enough and varied enough that you have meaningful decisions to make as far as what abilities you have queued up. And that means that the rogue in this case is going to have the type of ability arsenal that's going to allow them to move a little bit more in one of those two directions. If you want to load up on kind of more of your alchemical abilities, and the ones that were mentioned in the core reveal, and then ones you might find that might drop from a mob, or ones from these class masters teaching you their abilities and skills, you're going to need to make that's kind of our soft specialization, if you will. If you would even, I hesitate to even call it that because of all the connotation that comes with specialization, but the idea is that you can choose to play how you want to play within the arsenal that you have,
and you're rewarded for exploration, right?
You're rewarded for exploration because you've got to find these masters, and you've got to go out there and find these abilities to fill out your kit.
This is not a sit around and power level in one place repetitively, tediously. Mm-hmm. There's all sorts of reasons, including what Chris is talking about, to get out there and be rewarded for exploration.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways and a lot of depth that we could give in this answer, but I think the main meat and potato answer is yes, and that will come not through a means of UI window and point allotment, but it's going to come through being out in the world and having that rush of adrenaline, excitement moment when you finally get that ability and all that it means for you now. Because now that I have this ability, I can do so many more options are available to me in my gameplay. I think that's really powerful. And those abilities, I saw it asked, I think, going through the chat, I think it was Zaid actually that asked, is this, like, when I say core reveal, does that mean what we're seeing in these reveals is all of the 1 to 60 abilities, and then anything beyond that would be things you would get, at max level and beyond? No, the answer is no. These, I think, for this to work and be exciting, to scrape away at some of that jadedness, would be that these abilities, yes, there are some at that max level, max tier, that are most difficult to obtain, but then there's some that you do obtain along the way, and a good amount of them. that begin to fill out that breadth and get you used to some of those more horizontal, unique ways of playing your class. So these are abilities and skills you will find all along the way.
That's so cool. That really is, because you really don't see that kind of stuff in games these days. So David, how you feeling? You know,
I've been pretty quiet because I've letting you talk, man, and also I've been reading chat a lot. Which,
yeah,
by the way,
I noticed that.
Gryffindor too, exactly. You know what? Honestly, I'm excited for Pantheon because not only is it me a new experience and a beloved way of playing MMO where you don't solo everything by yourself, which I appreciate. Because so many times nowadays you log in MMOs and it's go do whatever you want whenever you want because it doesn't matter. I'm not harping on any MMOs. I know how it is. I've played enough. But the ability to actually play with people and have that mean something is what matters to me. And I feel that's what Pantheon is trying to bring back to everybody.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely. You got it.
You have any other questions before we move on to the next segment, David?
I think we're good. I mean, we've covered most of the things. I think we got most of the things chat wanted that we can actually talk about. Lord Gook, no, God, no. But honestly, like, I think everybody's really hyped for what you guys are trying to do and trying to bring. It's a beautiful game, obviously, and you're still in the alpha phase.
Pre-alpha, actually.
Oh, pre-alpha, there you go.
Yeah.
And you know, I think everybody's really excited for it and looking forward to what you guys bring forward coming out.
Oh, I know I am.
Yeah.
Is there anything
too.
you guys might want to mention about Pantheon before we move on to the next segment? Something that we didn't get to cover, or maybe if you wanted to tease some people, Chris, we know how you like doing that.
Me? No. Which archetypes should I put together for next month?
Ooh.
Tank. Sorry, did someone say that?
Yeah, tank sounds good to me. But let's people are starting to ask or send a lot of messages. Healer. Lots of people want healer, tank.
Barb.
I just want those
I think
druid.
it's everything.
They want to know more about
They
druids,
wanna know-
yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would just wrap things up by encouraging people out there who might be new to Pantheon to go to the website, pantheonmmo.com. Obviously, we're on Twitter, Facebook. But on the website, we have, the Pantheon differentiators, what makes it different, how we plan on moving the genre forward. Our game tenets, a very detailed FAQ, even a wiki. Our forums are very active. There's really a large and growing community out there, and if you're not already part of it, we certainly invite you to come on board.
Well, if it's anything like what's going on in chat, it sounds like you guys have a pretty good community too. These guys are really...
We really do.
Yeah,
we really do.
There's some
Definitely
great guys out there.
We are thankful on so many different levels. We have an amazing community.
I'd just like to say really quick too, just a shout out to our pre-alpha testers. Thank you all so much. Brad said it well earlier. The feedback, how much we enjoy as developers, even just being able to be in there with you guys and hear you, watch you play, read the feedback. It's joy. It's a delight to us, and it's incredibly helpful. So just wanted to say thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So our next segment, what are you playing and any plugs? David, let's start with you. What have you been playing? You've been playing anything this week?
Mainly I've just been playing Pillars of Eternity and Wild West Online for a review. Yeah. We'll blame Bill for that one.
It sounds like you're not happy about at least one of those, but
Well, Pillars I love to death. It's a great game.
But Wild West Online a little rough right now.
It's
I think
definitely
they just
rough.
released. They're not in early access, are they? Did they just...
No, it's full
release?
launch apparently, according to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you doing a review on it?
Yes, sir. I am. About 2 or 3 weeks time.
Okay. Well, if anyone's interested, then I would say check out that review when it goes live in 2 or 3 weeks. Hopefully you'll be on the show before then, so you'll be able to tell them whenever it's about to go live. But where can everyone find you, David?
You can hit me up on the Twitters at Branded Wolf or on Twitch with Branded Wolf and E at the end.
Okay. And Brad, Chris, are there any games that you guys are currently playing whenever you're not working on Pantheon?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a great game called Pantheon Development that I'm playing quite a bit. I get to play a lot of console games with my son, and when I say console games, I'm talking like more of the old school RPGs on Super Nintendo, N64. And those are actually very inspiring experiences a lot of times. But other than that, no, it's all going into Pantheon Dev.
Yeah.
I think for me, after a full day of Pantheon, just some simple iPad games, tower defense, something to have my mind shut down so I can actually fall asleep, because our minds are just racing all the time thinking about Pantheon. So anything that'll just chill me out and get me to bed, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I actually find myself playing a lot of mobile games lately. And there's a lot of good ones out there, so I don't hold it against you. And then where can people find you guys? I know that they can go to the Pantheon website. Do you guys have your own Twitters? Are you guys do you tweet? Are you tweeterers?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. Yeah, you can. I'm on Twitter. I am not the most active tweeter. Trying to get better at that. Like I said, I try to play nice, and there's a lot of beans I would like to spill more often than I do. So, but you can find me at @Joppa_VR on Twitter.
Excellent.
And I'm at Aradune on Twitter, and then on Facebook you can find me and communicate that way. And then of course we have all of our main game sites and addresses and things like that.
Awesome. And are you guys pretty active on the forums too over there?
Yeah, that's really so. To find information, go to watch our tweets, go to our websites. But if you have ideas and questions, and you want to really interact with the development team as well as the rest of the community, that's what the forums are all about. Please don't Facebook message me, a 25-page design doc. That's just not. that's
there goes my night.
Not where I read That's not where I check things out. That's what the forums are for, and you'll get a lot of great feedback. From a bunch of people expressing yourself and exchanging ideas and letting people know what you're excited about, what you're not. We encourage you to go to the forums for sure.
Excellent.
Actually, Deck, before we close out real quick, if I can just give a big shout out to chat. Thank you guys for being here today, and gals, and thank you for being as cheering as you are for Pantheon and everything. Big shout to the mods as well today. You guys did a lot. Wyatt, thank you for posting all those links. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Lastly for me, what I'm going to plug, I'm going to plug our podcast because I like to plug it. Everybody who's out in the chat right now, let's say you just got in on the tail end or something like that. Maybe you didn't get to catch everything, or you're dropping in and out and you don't really have an hour a day to sit here and watch the streams, but you have an hour commute. Just head on over to anywhere where you would get a podcast. We're on iTunes, we're on TuneIn, we're even on Spotify. So if you guys have a chance, head on over to the podcast, download the podcast. You can listen to this. You can listen to this episode as many times as you want, which is fantastic because I know Brad and Chris would love to spend an hour with everyone every day, but they may not be able to. Mm-hmm. So you guys can just listen to the podcast over and over again until
until you invite us back. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll do it again if you guys are willing.
We barely we barely touched on the game, so have us back soon.
Yeah, we will have you back as soon as we possibly can. You guys have more reveals coming, so there's always a reason to come back. So again, the podcast is GameSpace Game Show. That's all you have to search for. GameSpace, one word, Game Show, 2 words. And that is going to be it for our show this week. I would like to thank Brad and Chris for joining us this week. It was very enlightening, and we loved having you, and we do hope that you guys will come back.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And David, do I even need to say bye to you? Is it even worth it at this point?
No, it's not. I'll see you in Slack. It's all good.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone in chat. Thank you guys for joining us this week. We'll be back next week, and every week, same GameSpace time, same GameSpace channel. Have a good night, and see you all later.
At all.
Good night.